Rolling.
We're rolling. So, welcome to back. We are live from the Attune Conference in Serenity, Georgia. I think that's how you pronounce it.
I've been saying it wrong so much that I'm now forbidden to say it. I think it's Serenity.
Serenity? That
Yeah.
makes, yeah, that's
I think
probably
it's
right.
Serenity, but
I can't read.
don't tweet at me. We'll figure it out.
You think English people and people who are right could probably speak, but that's
Yeah.
Anyway. I am with Liz Gilbert, if that's all right if I call you Liz.
Yeah.
And we are here at the Attune Conference, and you just got off stage. I don't really need to introduce her work. She's the author of Eat, Pray, Love, New York Times bestselling author, Time 100 Influential People, and on and on and on. You guys know her work. You just got off stage, and it was a wonderful message. Welcome to the conference, and thank you for giving such an inspirational talk today.
Thanks for finding it inspirational.
Well, we need,
I'm glad to hear it. Yeah.
Well, we need, I think these weekends are good to reconnect and sort of slow down and open your mind to these kind of, discussions. And I think that I did appreciate what you had to say today, but
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. It was a nice, really warm, not geographically warm because it's a cold day, but when an audience is like that and people have chosen to do whatever they have to do to get here, and you just look out in that room and like how much of a hassle it was for people to find childcare and to get time off from work and to decide whether they're going to spend this money on themselves and to get over the guilt of doing that and the concern about whether it's worth, I just see in people's eyes, like, did I do the right thing by coming here? And I've been a consumer of conferences like this, long before anybody ever heard of me. I was going to these things and I still go to them as a participant. I still think I think it sends a message somehow to some part of your mind that you're taking your life seriously in a way, that you're curating your life. And that's important to do.
No, absolutely. I wanted to ask you about Big Magic, and I know that that's the book previous to this, but I love the purpose, and I think it's appropriate. It's an appropriate message for where we are this weekend. You talk about in there about embracing your own curiosity and letting go of some of the pain and suffering. How do you do that? Like, how do you get to the point in your life where I feel like I do a lot of coaching, executive coaching, and one of the biggest problems is not do they have the right process in place for their accounting or their human resources. It's the people side of it, and they're struggling with their particularly high performance CEOs and people who are doing big things and managing a lot of people, big organizations. They're struggling with themselves. They're struggling with their demons. They're struggling with the things that they
only all of them. Only all of the people.
Right. And I think so I want, how do you get to the point where you feel free to sort of let some of that stuff go and be your authentic self, and how do you particularly as a leader? I write about business.
Yeah.
So how as a leader can you be vulnerable at the same time feel lead?
Actually, I can give you, I was about to say, I don't know how much I can speak to a business or corporate experience, although over the years I've stopped. I used to get really nervous whenever I'd be invited to speak before a corporate audience because I would think, I don't know how to talk to corporate people, until I just took the word corporate out.
Right.
It's like, oh, I know how to talk to people, because I guarantee that every single person in this audience is going through, has gone through, or will go through loss, pain, shame, suffering, addiction, death of family member, injustice, violation, abuse, disappointment. They're all in that at some place. And I know how to talk about that. But I would say that I can give you a really concrete example. I recently came to be published by a publishing house called Riverhead, which is a subsidiary and part of the family of Random House and Penguin. It's a big, a small family inside of a big corporation. From the very beginning, when I came to Riverhead, I was like, there's something very unusual about this imprint. There's something very unusual about everybody who works here. everyone is very, very enthusiastic and very excited. This is rare in the publishing world because normally everyone is nearly suicidal
Right,
because, you know,
right,
we're always, it's such doom and gloom. You know, it's like
right,
the end of media. People don't read anymore. The internet's going to kill everybody. You know, the end of thoughtful debate. The golden. There's always this sense in publishing that the golden age was some other time, and
right.
that now we're just heading off a cliff and everyone's going to die. So it's a very fear-based reality,
Hmm.
and this place, the culture in this office didn't have that. And I've now been with them for 4 years, and I can say that it's been upheld. And I've been trying to figure out why. And I finally asked one of the publicists, why are you guys like this when everyone else is like that?
Right.
And also they generate beautiful work and they create bestsellers, and they, you know, there's just this lively, vibrant, um, enthusiasm based, you know. And she said, well, it's really easy. When we got hired, Jeff Klosky, who's the head of the company, says to everybody, you will never be disciplined for failing. You will never, ever be disciplined for failing as long as I think you failed in a really interesting way. Um, and
Okay, I like
so
that.
dazzle me with your failures.
Right.
You know, fail in increasingly fascinating ways. And she said what it did was that it opened up creativity. And she had worked at other publishing houses where it was
Hmm.
so fear based, and the bottom line was the bottom line, and you've got to make, you know, 5% growth every quarter. And it's not as though Riverhead doesn't care about those
Sure,
things,
sure.
or keep an eye on that stuff. It's just that he got this magic trick of saying to people, you're not going to get in trouble and fail, just make me really impressed with your failure.
Right.
And she said he upholds it, you know. And so she's like, we do crazy things here. We do promotions like that no other publishing house would do. We take insane risks. We make really weird partnerships. We, you know, and
Right.
every day she's like, I just feel like I'm boiling over with ideas because none of them can go wrong as long as they're weird enough. So that's all I've got. And, you know,
No,
and
but
I
that's
think
right.
that asking yourself in your own life too, how can I, there's that Samuel Beckett line, fail again, fail better. How can you fail better? And by better, meaning more interestingly.
I like
Like,
that.
well, that was interesting. Crash, you know. And it's not that it's necessarily fun as it's happening, but it's kind of fascinating to think of interesting
But
ways
you
to
can't
fail.
win and or you can't be successful unless you do that, right?
And you might not be successful when you do it. I
No,
mean,
that
we're all grown-ups here, you
right.
know. I mean, I think that's a really important thing too, is that we don't tell fairy tales. And that's something that I was talking about in my speech today too.
Right.
The objection that I have to the spiritual culture of manifestation and vision boards and the secret, you know, and this
Right.
idea that all you have to do is envision it strong enough and you can get it. And look, there's such a thing as reality. You know, my beloved partner, the most important person in my world, died 2 years ago from pancreatic cancer. We didn't have that on our vision board, and
Right.
nothing that we could envision was going to make that not be so. And yet she died creatively. She died creatively. She had the most interesting death I've ever seen.
I'm amazed you
um,
can laugh about that
I
because
can, because she would, you know, and it didn't mean that it was easy. It was the biggest nightmare I've ever been in. But she, by I mean die creatively, what I meant is that she every single day made her own choices based on her own agency, took huge risks, ignored medical advice, pushed back against her family, pushed back against anybody that said you have to do it this way. And she's like, no, I'm going to do it my way, which was sometimes catastrophic, sometimes epic, but was always interesting. And I think that you can, she proved you can do that right up to your last days.
well, I mean, she did it on her own terms, and
For
that's
sure. She didn't know
and
how to do it any other
and
way.
it sounds like Raina was that way.
She was that way. Believe me, she left all of us exhausted who were taking care of her because she continued to do it on her own terms. But I wouldn't have had her do it any other way.
How did she change you
How did she change me? Oh my
in
God.
the million
You know,
ways?
she was a weather force. I mean, she, you know, one of the most beautiful definitions of creativity that I've ever heard is that creativity is surrender to the unpredictable,
Hmm.
and allowing yourself to be absorbed by the unpredictable. She wasn't supposed to be the way that my life went, you know. I was the woman from Eat, Pray, Love.
Right.
You know, it was the whole world knew how my life was
Yeah.
supposed to. I wasn't supposed to fall in love with my hairdresser,
You
you
kind
know.
of lived it kind of right out there.
Yeah, like that's not the plan. And yet she was so captivating. She was so dynamic. She was so brave. She was so vulnerable, honest, and um, mostly what she did was that she did something no one else has ever been able to do with me. She made me feel safe. She made me feel safe because she had it under control.
Right.
Because Rhea was always the most powerful person in any room that she walked into. So whenever I walked into a room behind her, I was like, it's all good. Rhea's here. I don't have to worry about it. She's got it. Whatever weirdness goes down,
You
she's
could
going to
just,
handle it. And that sense when I found out that she was sick and dying was very terrifying for me, to feel like, oh my God, my safety's gone. But what's happened is actually a download of lessons from her on how to be brave that I inherited, that
mhm.
now are in me. So I almost feel like I've become this weird, a creature who's sort of half Rhea, half Liz at this point. And when I need her, I become her. When I've got to hold a boundary, when I've got to tell a difficult truth, when I've
You
got
say
to,
no,
I
or
just,
how
yeah, when I've got to do all the stuff that I watched her do so well, that I actually, thank God, learned something where I can keep myself safer now.
okay. How
Yeah.
did how did she help you understand truth?
Well, she had,
Or
yeah, well, Ray had been an addict. She was a heroin addict and a speedball junkie for most of her, from basically, she was a drug addict from the time she was about 12 until she was about 34.
right.
And somehow managed to survive being a needle using heroin addict on the Lower East Side in the 80s and 90s. I have no idea how she survived that, but she's formidable, and she did survive several overdoses. There's a certain level of truth telling that recovered addicts have, I found,
Hmm.
that is um, fierce
Yeah.
and not to be found in other people, because the only way that you can overcome an addiction is through radical truth telling. There's a truth telling that's taught in 12 steps that's beyond what we're taught in culture. That's about self accountability, keeping your own side of the street clean, owning your resentment, speaking directly, not
Hmm.
manipulating people, using honesty. And so Rhea had used the flame of truth to purify herself out of addiction, and then she never dropped it. And so she used to say the best line, and I am somebody who's always been very scared of disappointing people,
Right.
needing a huge amount of approval. It doesn't is not conducive to truth telling.
No, you're right. Yeah, that's
Like, and,
absolutely.
and when we call ourselves or call other people pleasers, a more honest word would be liar.
Wow. Yeah.
You know,
That's
and a
okay.
gentler version of that would be people manipulator.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because essentially what a people pleaser is saying is, I'm so scared of you.
Yeah.
I am so scared of you. I will say whatever you need me to say to make me feel safe in this room. And Rhea didn't do that. And what ended up happening because of that is people felt safe with her because they knew where they stood. And she used to
Wow.
say,
That's powerful.
she used to say, the truth has legs. It's
Yeah.
the only thing that will be left standing in the room after all the bullshit dissolves, after everything, all of the drama, after all of that is gone. There will only be one thing left in the room, and that will be the truth. And since that's where we're going to end up, why don't we just start with it and
Wow.
spare ourselves the drama? We can do the drama game, or we can just start where we're going to end up. Here's the truth. And
Hmm.
and she would just lay it down and skip all of the normal steps that people go through. And I can't tell you how many times I've been in situations
That's
where I've
refreshing.
just thought, boy, we're going to end up there, so why don't we just cut to it? Just she used to say, let me break it down for you. And
Let
then
me
just
lay it
just
out.
break it down and just lay it out. And there's a great compassion in doing that. It seems like it's harsh and hard, but I find the most surprising thing about the truth is that once you enter into a field where people are telling the truth, it's extremely relaxing. Even if the truth is heartbreaking, there's a sort of cosmic psychic relaxation that my body goes into, because I'm like, okay, now we're telling the truth.
Right.
Okay, this sucks. Like, this sucks, and this isn't what I wanted, and it's not what you wanted, but the truth is just,
Doesn't mean it's not painful.
no, but I'll take that pain over the anxiety of the drama and the
Oh yeah, any
yeah,
day.
any day. Like,
Any day.
just give it to me, like, just please. And I've found that I don't feel safe in rooms where people can't tell the truth.
Okay.
No matter how nice they are, no matter how pleasing they are, my body anxiety goes up, because I'm like, I don't know what
Your
this
tolerance
person's.
is it's tolerance for
Yeah, I don't know where
for
this.
bullshit is
I don't
just
know where this person's hustle is. I don't know what their hustle is, and that's why Rhea made everyone feel safe, is because she didn't have one.
maybe just read it better now
Yeah, I
as we
think
get
it could be
older.
true. That could be true too.
Some of it's just
Yeah.
maybe we don't care at this
I
age.
remember buying. I was with a friend who's very honest and very blunt, and I was she was on a shopping, not a shopping spree. She was on the opposite of it. She was taking a year off from shopping out of protest to consumer culture, and which I thought was a very cool thing environmentally and sort of
Right.
ethically,
Right.
and the shopping hiatus, and part of it was in response to Trump being elected, where she was like, "We just rewarded greed, and
Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
just done with it. I don't want to be part of it. I want to participate in it." So anyway, I was with her one time, and I saw a bracelet that I thought she would like, and I was like, "I'll get it for her because she's, and I bought it to
Go
her.
around
And,
the rule.
well, it's just like it'd be nice. It reminds me of her. And I hand it to her. She opens it. And she goes, "Oh, this is so beautiful. I'll never wear this." And she gave it back.
Oh, ouch.
But it was amazing. No one ever does that. And I was like, that is the balls out coolest thing I have seen somebody do
Absolutely.
in such a long time. And I was like, well, thanks for telling me. She goes, I love the gesture, but it's going to sit on my shelf. Give it to somebody else.
We should all do that for Christmas.
And I did. I just the next day gave it to somebody who was so delighted and excited to get a present out of nowhere. And I thought, man, we could all strive to be a little bit more like that. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
How are you different? I saw something you did, an interview you did a while back, and you talked about that you're different really than you were when you wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and that you look back at it now. I think maybe it was the 10th anniversary of it coming out, and you said you reread the book, and it kind of shocked you in some ways. Can you talk about that? How are you different then than you are, or different now than you were then?
So yeah,
and how did that sort of?
Yeah. It was an interesting experience. I don't usually go back and read my books, but
I don't either.
when the 10th,
I don't.
just,
They're painful to
yeah,
read.
exactly. That's
They're
part
really
of it is that
actually
it's
they're painful to read.
Yeah, the wincing is painful.
My editor a couple of months ago asked me to go back and turn it into my first book into a textbook, and I said for university, and I said I cannot go back and
Can't
read.
bear it.
I cannot go back and write that again. I can't.
Oh,
But I'm sorry.
painful. No, I get it. I get it. But it was fascinating. It wasn't what I was expecting, the experience of reading it. My essence is exactly the same.
Okay.
I'm the same. I've always been this person. I've always been this person who wants lots of adventure, who wants lots of stimulation, who's super curious about the world, who feels very hedged in and fenced in by convention. I recognized her. I've always known her. What I was doing at that time, though, was apologizing for her. And Eat, Pray, Love I can read it between the lines. It's full of apology. It's full of apology to the world. I'm so sorry that I wasn't able to keep this marriage going because I'm supposed to. I'm so sorry that I don't want to have kids. A lot of defensiveness about that. A lot of like, don't worry, I still love kids. I just, trying to explain. And there's one little piece of the book that absolutely broke my heart. It was this point in one of my last days in Italy where I had one of my best meals and I was feeling so happy and so literally full. I'd gained 30 pounds and enjoyed every single ounce of it. And I was just gorging myself and just feeling relaxed in a way that I hadn't felt in years. And I said, I wrote, I'm so happy right now. And then I hedged it and I said, I know that eventually I'm going to have to go back to being a conventional person, a responsible, there's the deadly word, a responsible person.
Yeah.
And I promise I will, but not yet. Just give me a little more time. And I read that. I was like, who are you talking to? Who are you making this promise to? Who are you apologizing to? The only mistake that I made about Eat, Pray, Love was not continuing to live that way.
Right.
I had actually found the secret, and the secret was to literally just follow your bliss, your curiosity, and your excitement.
Which you were doing,
which is what I was doing unabashedly. And then I was like, okay, that's you only get a year. You only get a year of that. Now zip it up, put it back away, and go make sure that people think that you're a respectable, responsible person. That I will never do again. So that really broke my heart because I thought, oh, honey, I wish I could have just told you that you were on the right. This was the right track.
Right.
Like the conventional life that you felt you needed to live in order to make other people feel more comfortable around you or to make yourself feel more comfortable was the mistake.
I get the sense, and I think you've said it, is that you don't try to do that anymore. That you don't feel any need to, when you walk in a room, to make people feel comfortable. Or,
I like to connect.
Yeah, that's different though, I think.
So I'll do that, and if I see somebody who's shy, I'll try to to find a way to connect with them.
But the topics aren't always comfortable.
Yeah, no,
right?
No.
But you don't shy away from those.
No, I'm happy with, I'm happy to put it out there. And I also just know from experience that the more vulnerably I share difficult things that I'm going through, the more of service I am, and I've spoken about how grateful I am that so many people like Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle and Rob Bell, Cheryl Strayed, people who have become friends of mine over the years. I'm always thanking them for doing their learning in public.
Right.
I think it's a really generous thing to do. I think it's a really brave and generous thing to do. You will be criticized for showing too much of yourself. You'll be criticized for navel gazing, but actually you're helping the people who are criticizing you for navel gazing didn't need what you were doing, whatever. They can find whatever they need
Right.
someplace else, but anytime that I've been able to read somebody who's truly openly vulnerable about what their experience here in Earth School has been, it makes it easier for me, and so that's what makes me turn over my stuff, like the distance between when I have a difficult, painful growth experience and when I want to talk about it has narrowed to where it's almost like difficult, painful growth experience in the morning. Afternoon, I'm going to put something on Instagram on that,
Right.
because right away, I'm just going to want to be like, hey, everybody, this happened. Here's what I think.
Hmm.
And I'm just going to put it out there and maybe it'll be of use to someone else.
So it's painful when you don't. It's painful if you figure something
So,
out or you go through something for you
yeah.
and you don't share it.
Well, why would you hoard if you've been lucky enough to have a breakthrough or
Hmm.
some moment of epiphany? Why wouldn't I give it? You know what I mean? Like, why would
Yeah.
I hoard it? Don't hoard your
Keep it
epiphanies.
in. Keep it in.
Don't hoard your epiphanies, people. We need them. I need yours. You need mine. We all need each other's. Otherwise, it's just too
We do
freaking
a lot of
hard.
that though, don't we? Don't we hoard that pain? Or I mean, even pain we sort of keep
Yeah.
in. How do we? It's interesting that it actually hurts you when you don't
It does
speak and when you
hurt.
don't share and
I
you
had a
don't.
teacher in India who said every talent that you have that you don't use becomes painful, becomes a burden.
That's profound.
And I think it's also true for every realization about life that you have and don't share becomes a burden. It wants to be shared. It wants to be. It's not so much about I want to. The thing itself wants to be put out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it is painful when you don't do that.
What is how do you how does it how does your creativeness come out? Um, because you've switched between nonfiction and fiction, and how do you what's that process for you, or how does
Yeah.
it? You wake up one day and you say, "I've got to put this on paper." This is you let the spirit kind of guide you, without a lack of a better word.
Spirit's a good word. I
Sort of
can't think of
guide
a
you as
better
to
one.
to
Yeah,
what it is that you're. I mean,
I do as I'm told.
okay, fair enough.
I do as I'm told, and I don't have a master career plan. Um, I've been very careful to keep let's say this, my material life or my I don't have a boss. I don't have any employees. I don't have an assistant. I don't have a board of directors. I don't have a brand manager. I don't have a product. I don't have
Yeah.
any of that. It's just me. And so that makes it really easy to be like, well, what wants to happen next? And my friend Martha Beck always says that the definition of that magic is really nothing more than there's a thing that wants to happen next,
Hmm.
and then you are in that slipstream with it, and you allow that thing that wants to happen next to happen, and then you look like a magician. You look like you have some sort of amazing magical power, but you're really just a servant to the thing that wants to happen next. That's the word I was looking for. So I feel like um, I don't know. I mean, the next book that I'm working on is very likely going to be a novel that's about grief and about what happens when somebody leaves and also doesn't. That feeling that we
Right.
have of people's something about somebody staying behind after their physical body leaves. I didn't expect it to be a novel. It's a kind of supernatural ghost story that's growing in my mind. I'm like, really? Like I expected and the world expected
Yeah.
for me to write a memoir about Rhea. I was planning on it, but that's actually not the instruction that I'm getting. I don't know where the instruction comes from. I just obey whatever the mothership tells me to
No,
do.
it's following your
I trust
intuition, your
it.
gut.
I
And
just trust it. I wish I trusted everything in the world as much as I trust
where
my
did
own
you?
creative process.
I think that that's we struggle with that. I mean, I see that a lot in my coach in my consulting and coaching. Is that we're not following
Hmm.
what our gut says. I don't know if it's our gut or our
I have
intuition,
no idea what
but
it is, but gut works, intuition works, instincts.
how'd you learn to
Um,
listen to it? Because I think that we struggle with that.
I had a good example. My mostly from my dad. My father is vehemently what is the word I'm looking for? Anti-authoritarian. At the same time, he's so weird. He's so weird. It's an interesting thing to grow up with a true eccentric raising you, and everyone thinks their dad is weird, but I will throw down against anybody. My dad is genuinely a weird man, and he maybe a little spectrumy,
Yeah.
and or whatever. But I'm not saying that in any sort of a bad way. Like definitely. Um, Marches to obeys orders from some source beyond what anyone wants him to do. A total non-cooperator, passive, a massive passive aggressive non-cooperator. You cannot get my father to do what he doesn't want to do, and you cannot stop him from doing what he
You
wants
can't
to do.
manipulate him to do it.
You cannot. And my mom has spent a lifetime trying, and it cannot be done. And he has very quietly, very stubbornly created a life that's entirely what he wanted. And a lot of that was inconvenient to his family and maybe inconsiderate of his family. And I may have psychic scars from that in other
No,
realms.
sure, but
But what I did get from that was this sense of tremendous permission. And he also didn't tell us what we should be doing. He just his whole thing was just don't get in my way.
right.
This is what I'm going to
Don't
be
care what you
doing. I
do,
don't
but
really give a shit about you. I mean, he's a very, very like benevolent neglect. Like I'm doing my thing, and so I grew up really watching an example of what it looks like when someone truly doesn't care what anybody thinks of what they're doing. I mean, to a fault. It's like, no, I'm not getting a permit to put a septic tank in. I don't need to do that. Those aren't for people like me. I will just do it.
yeah.
I don't need a roof. I don't need a licensed electrician to come in this 200-year-old house and do the electricity so my family doesn't catch on fire.
Fry.
I'll mostly figure it out myself. And he just didn't care. He drove 20-year-old beat up cars. He had no sense of material culture, of needing to look a certain way. A guy at his office, he was an engineer, of course, and a guy at his office once said to him, John, we know you like to save energy, but you could put the lights on when you get dressed in the morning. Like he didn't care if his clothes matched. He didn't care, and he made what he wanted to make. He wanted to be a Christmas tree farmer. He became a Christmas tree farmer. He wanted to raise goats. He one day took our Ford Pinto and drove off and found somebody selling goats and bought them and put them in the back of the Pinto and brought them home. And we just all worked around it. So it never occurred to me that I had to ask anybody's permission to create. It
Right.
never occurred to me that I had to check in with any authority about whether it was okay for me to do what I wanted to do. So I don't have that programmed into me. And that's why I feel like I've spent so much of my life trying to write permission slips for people to get them out of the prison of their limitation of I'm not allowed to do this because what will people say? Or what if it fails? Or what if, if there's nothing else that I do, it's just trying to get people to believe that they don't need your or anyone's. I inherited that total disregard for authority.
Right.
I didn't
Right.
believe I needed to go to graduate school to get an MFA to become a writer. I still don't believe you have to do that. So I don't believe in diplomas. I don't believe that this is necessary. I just wasn't taught to believe that it was necessary. And that's kind of awesome.
It is kind of awesome.
Yeah, I'm very, very grateful for that. And I'm happy to spread the gospel of that as much as I can, of extreme resistance to. I wish I was as free emotionally as I am creatively. I've got my obstacles are not that. I've got other ways that I sabotage myself. But
Okay.
But creatively, for some reason, I've always just believed that I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do.
That's rather freeing, isn't it?
Yeah, I wish I could be like that in
Well,
all
but if
aspects
you
of
can
my
sync
life.
up, if you can sync up that right with the emotional
I'm
stuff.
working on it, but
Well,
that's
that's
where
constant.
my work is. I mean, we've
That's
all got
correct.
some place where your work is.
Right.
Creatively, that's not where my work is. I'm good. I was given that one, and
Mhm.
then other ways is where my work lies.
Yeah. We all have it, and we
I'm working on it. I show up. I'm a worker.
I think it's
nothing
always,
else. Yeah.
you're never going to be finished.
Yeah.
No,
Hope not.
I don't
It'd be
think
terribly boring.
it would be terribly boring, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
How do, I guess the last question I have is, well, I've got millions, but we probably should wrap it up. But the work that you're doing, when you write a book or when you are in that creative space, do you feel like it's, I know when I write, I'm trying to work through a problem. I'm trying to work through something I've dealt with or dealing with currently. Is it the same for you? Is it, are you trying to solve a problem or think through a problem? Are you trying to, or have you already solved the problem that you're writing
Mm.
about? Because I usually, by the time I get to the end, it's given me, I've sort of maybe come up with my answer,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you start, do you know the end of the story, I guess?
Depends.
Depends. Okay.
Depends. I think I'll give two examples of two very different things. I wrote a book called Committed that
Hmm.
was about marriage and it was me trying to work, and I actively, openly, in the first pages of the book say, this book is me trying to work through my tremendous ambivalence and resistance and frustration and fear of marriage.
Okay.
Let me see what I can figure out. And it's like me going on a research journey to try to find a way to feel comfortable with an institution that inherently makes me uncomfortable. Because I had to get married the second time to my then partner because he was, I was going to say evicted, deported. Well, he
Same
wasn't
thing.
deported.
Same sort of
He was
same thing.
refused entry to the United States, and it was really going to mess up his life in an enormous way, in my life. And the fastest and easiest way to really
But you
save
felt,
him
must have felt,
was to
that must have
marry.
been stressful.
It was stressful, and it was stressful for him too, because he had also gone through a very painful divorce, and he didn't want to get married again and go through all that again. We were very happy to just live life on our own terms. So it brought a lot of anxiety and a lot of fear, and so I wrote that book trying to create my own neural pathway that I could do this without feeling like I had abandoned myself or that I was putting myself in harm's way. And I found it. It was a tricky puzzle to figure out how can I see this and be okay with this. So in that book, the book itself was my own act of investigation. And then Big Magic was a very different story. Big Magic, I was trying to give over what I already knew. And again, where I say that I've had a really pretty combative life with creativity. I've always felt I love my creativity. I feel like it loves me back. I'm not a suffering artist. I'm a joyful artist. I see a lot of people suffering. When I look at the way that they're thinking and the things that they're believing, I see things that I feel I could help them with. And especially after I gave this TED talk on creativity, a lot of people were coming to me and asking for creative advice. And it's a very different kind of book. It can be jarring to posit yourself as an expert, but I also felt like, well, this is the thing I'm an expert in. Don't come to me for marriage advice. Don't come for me on how to raise your kids. Don't come for me, on how to work in the corporate world. But I've been doing this my whole life, and I've been doing this in a way that I think is very different from the way that most people are taught to do it.
You've done okay.
And I've done okay. And at that time I was like, I'm a woman in her 40s who's earned this. And I'm actually going to say, yeah, I have some ideas. Take them, don't take them. Here it is. So that's the only book I've ever written from a position of like, let me tell you how to do this. Kids gather around, listen to your Auntie Liz. It's just, I don't know that I'll ever write another book quite with that level of authority, but I felt like, no, I want to do it this way. And I feel comfortable having done it that way.
That's interesting that was the book that you feel like you knew the answer going into it.
Yeah.
So what I guess the other question is, you just kind of brought up, it made me think about it. When you're talking about those marriages and stuff, do you think you're afraid to love again?
A little bit.
Are you?
Yeah, I mean, it's always scary. I think, for sure, and I do it I jump off cliffs. I don't have a lot of restraint. So I think it's not that I'm afraid of love. I think I'm a little bit afraid of my own judgment, and my own boundaries or lack of, so it's more a self-distrust than it is a distrust in in love. I think love's great. I'm
No,
not
it
going to
is.
blame love.
No.
You know, this is just me acting out. You know, like this is
Right.
just me not knowing how to, just not knowing how to, not knowing how to walk more carefully into things. So that scares me. I'm much more afraid of myself than I am of anyone. It's not even that I have trust issues. It's everyone else is fine. It's not them. Like
It's
truly,
not you, it's me.
honestly, in my case, I can truly say it is not you. It is really me, you know. And so that's the, you know, again, that's where my work lies.
Is it
And
being ready? I mean, is it, what is it? What is the,
I don't know. I mean, I think it's a little bit for me of having been so deeply enmeshed with so many people. I don't really know how to not enmesh. I don't really know how to not be codependent. I don't know how to not rescue. I don't know how to not want to be rescued. And so there's an education, I think, that you can, you know, if you see these repetitive cycles in yourself, you can be like, I notice that this keeps happening. What is the common denominator? You know, and there's been times in life where I really thought I was on the other side of that, and then I found out, oh no, I'm still just as susceptible to this kind of madness as ever. So and that's why I'm at this point in my life just taking some time to just be alone and shore up my own being, with hopes that
you have
that,
to
you
be
know,
happy alone, don't you?
yeah, you really
You're,
do have to know that, like, you're good, you know, that you're good regardless of you know, and I think that, and then I fall desperately in love with somebody, and all of a sudden they're my higher power, you know. But you know,
that's okay.
whatever.
That's all right.
It's Earth School. We're all students. It's always the first day of Earth School. Every single day is like the first day of kindergarten of Earth School, and whenever I veer off into catastrophic failure, I just have to remind myself of that. And what my friend Rob Bell says, which is, you know, when you're having a shame spiral, feeling like you're not doing it right, you just take a Sharpie and you write the word student on your hand and just remind
Well,
yourself
student
that
driver.
student driver,
I
like
like
you might
that.
want to back up like, you know, like 50 feet, you know, and just be just compassionate to the fact that, you know, I'm not sure that we came here to become masters. You know, I think we come here to live and die as students, and
Experience.
I think that's a much more compassionate way to do things than the way that says you're supposed to know how to do this.
Well, and that might never change for you,
Yeah,
right? But at
yeah,
the same time, you're going to experience all those emotions and all those things that happen.
yeah.
But embrace that and live it and just and you know love it, I guess. And
That seems wise, right?
yeah,
Doesn't
you
it seem
know,
more
like
kind than?
instead of trying to like change it and change
Yeah,
so much that you can't control because you're never going to stop falling in love. You're never going to stop wanting,
apparently not.
you know, and that's okay. I think that's okay. I think
Oh
that's okay. I
God,
think that
yeah.
being who you are and loving that and you know and realizing there are going to be times where you have to pick yourself up off the floor and start over, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not easy,
It
but
better be okay.
it better be
It
okay.
better be okay, because a
Right.
lot of us spend a lot of time on the floor, you know. So I just think that it really had best be okay. That all of it had best be okay, and I
At
do
least you're
know.
feeling. At least you're feeling
God,
it.
I wouldn't trade it. You know, I one experience that I've never had, thank God, and I feel like I've experienced such a vast realm of human encounters is numbness. You know, I just and I when I see people who are numb and shut down, cut off, um, out to lunch, unavailable, I just think, as painful as it is to feel, oh, I'll take this over that any day, you know. And I do know that there's only one way to pierce numbness, and that is by actually feeling your feelings. And it's not always a fun ride, but it beats the hell out of not feeling at all. Really, really, truly does.
Yeah, that's great. Great words to live by.
Thanks,
um,
Rhett.
what's the? I always ask this with people I sit down with. What's the best advice you ever got?
Hmm.
And who gave it? Who gave it to you?
Best advice ever.
Stretch. We can stretch.
Well, yeah, that's a stretch. I've gotten such good advice because I've spent so many years sitting at people's feet. But I'm going to say I really like this, and it comes from the Upanishads, which means who gave it to me was some unknown writer 3,000 to 5,000 years ago. But it's from the Bhagavad Gita. Um, is that the same as the Upanishads? I don't know. Anyway, it's from the Bhagavad Gita,
Hmm.
and it's advice that is given to Krishna, from the gods, and it says, "It is better to live your own destiny imperfectly than it is to live a perfect imitation of somebody else's life. I know that sounds very new agey, but it's very ancient, and I think it's beautifully true. I mean, it was just basically saying there's a story you're here to play out, and it's yours. And it's when, I don't think it's Krishna. Wait a minute, I've got it wrong. Don't tweet at me, you guys, or do, I don't care. Who is it in the Bhagavad Gita? Who's the warrior who's told that he's got to go to war? And anyway, everybody knows.
Yes, yes.
But it's the warrior who's told he's got to go to war and kill all his relatives, and he's like, "How is this possibly my destiny?" And the answer is because it is.
Yeah.
Because it is. And yeah, this is the play. I think of Ram Dass always saying, embrace the incarnation. When these things happen to you where you're like, how could this possibly be my destiny? How could this possibly be going this way? Because it is.
Yeah.
And it's better to live, whatever your response is going to be to that is up to you, but you're not in charge of the things that are happening. And how are you going to be in that? Who are you going to be? And hint, authentically yourself might be the way, might be the best way to go through that. So yeah, and I think that's the best advice.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's spot on, I think. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was lovely talking to you.
Yeah,
Glad we had this chance.
No doubt.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for paying attention and listening to us
Thanks,
today.
everybody.
Yes.
Take good care of you. Be gentle to you.
And we'll be back in here in a few minutes. We've got several more interviews today.
How are you doing this energetically?
I love it.
Yeah?
This is good for me.
Okay,
so,
good.
Yeah.
I don't want to be caretaking you. Sorry.
No, you
but-
can. We all
But
need
it's
people.
a lot of energy that
No,
you're
it
putting
is.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Good.
I get it back.
Good.
So it's I'll collapse tonight.
Good. Excellent.
But it's all
Bye,
good.
everybody.
Have a good weekend. But if you are sticking around to these interviews, please stay with us. We've got several more people to come. And again, have a great weekend.